updates. We now move over to Europe now, where US President Donald Trump has said there's a 50-50 chance of striking a trade deal with the European Union ahead of an August the 1st deadline, after which Washington has vowed to impose sweeping 30% tariffs on EU goods. Trump and EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen are set to meet today in Turnberry, Scotland, following intense overnight talks with US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick that diplomats described as combative. At stake is a $1.9 trillion transatlantic trade relationship. The EU is pushing to avoid tariffs that would impact key sectors like autos, steel and pharmaceuticals. The current draft deal includes a 15% baseline US tariff, the same rate granted to Japan, with carve-outs for aircraft, lumber and spirits. In exchange, the EU would boost US LNG imports and make new investment pledges. But the deal still needs approval from all 27 EU member states. Without a deal, the EU faces tariffs as high as 50% on steel and aluminium. And he has readied a $109 billion in retaliatory duties on US goods starting on August the 7th. We're once again joined by Raymond Vickery, who's a former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce, to discuss this further. Raymond, thank you very much once again. Raymond, what are your thoughts about Donald Trump's negotiating here? He says it's a 50-50 on whether this transatlantic trade relationship that's worth $1.9 trillion, it has a sweeping tariff imposed on it. What are your thoughts on how this situation might develop? And also, let's bear in mind both outcomes of this, if a deal is made and if it is not.
Well, thanks again for having me on this subject, which is very close to me as a former Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Trade Development. You know, security matters and economic matters are joined at the hip. President Trump doesn't seem to recognize the great harm that is done to the position of the United States as leader of a so-called free world by creating this kind of problem. It does not stop at economics and goes across the board. That having been said, this is vintage Donald Trump in creating a problem which really didn't exist, and then halfway measures which he will claim as a great victory. Now, thank goodness the Wall Street acronym TACO, Trump always chickens out, does apply in part, and that he won't follow through in terms of the really outrageous position of cutting off trade that he has been putting forward. The difficulty, of course, is just as in security negotiations of miscalculation on both sides, which causes the EU and the United States to stumble into a full-fledged trade war, which will have incalculable harmful effects. So far, the results of this approach, this transactional approach, have not been disastrous because really the positions which are taken by President Trump have not come to pass. I fully expect that there will be some kind of announcement which President Trump will claim as a great victory. But really what's going on, of course, is a sort of showmanship approach as opposed to dealing with the substance. In the longer run, it's going to be necessary to get back to some semblance of an international multilateral trade system, which we've had for 80 years, first under the General Agreements on Tariffs and Trade, and then on the World Trade Organization. You're not going to be able to sustain a real estate dealer's approach that everything is a transaction. There's a winner and loser, and you go forward and calculate some sort of victory based upon a false perception of the trade deficit. So I think something will come out of it and will restore some stability. But the harm which is being done to the international system will be there, not to mention the harm which is going to be done to the American consumer that's already experiencing some increase in inflation, which President Trump had promised to solve really as a part of his campaign last year. So something will come out of this, but in the longer run, this is not a sustainable way to run an international trade system.
Yes, indeed, Raymond Vickery. You are staying with us for further updates, but we will move on. But we will bring you any news of that meeting with the EU chief and the US president as soon as we get it.